Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose. With me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about how to deal with defiant teenagers. Who wants to know about that? I bet there are quite a few parents who would like to know about that. And you also see in the title, it says download the free 4-point trauma-informed checklist. I want to encourage everyone to go and download the free 4-point trauma-informed checklist that myself and Dr. Tricia Bridgewater created as a daily checklist for parents and professionals and teachers to use to help you be more mindful and trauma-informed. Just go to posttraumachecklist.com, www.posttraumachecklist.com. So tonight, actually earlier this afternoon, I had a question from one of our Lovolution members, and it triggered a thought. In fact, I didn't know exactly what I was going to cover tonight. I was thinking maybe I'm going to talk about a therapy topic, creating therapy breakthroughs. And then I remember the question I had from the parent earlier, and she was talking about her teenager who doesn't like the holiday season. And he said it's one of his least favorite seasons, and is just not happy about it. And I thought, typically that would stress a lot of parents out. And the mom, very attuned, she said, it's good this time that we're having, family members are coming to our house, so that's actually lessened some of the anxiety. But I thought, that is a scenario in which a parent can become really stressed. I can just imagine that your teenager says to you, I hate Christmas. I hate the family members coming over. I don't like it. I don't want to be involved. Yada, yada, things teenagers say. And that creates a lot of anxiety for the parents. Why does that create anxiety? First and foremost, the teen is speaking from a place of amygdala agitation. And I say that because I want you to begin framing things in a neurologic perspective, just a generalist kind of brain understanding perspective. And I also want you to start framing it as an emotional perspective tied into fear and love, and then ultimately fear and stress. Because I feel like if you'll start doing that, if you begin just kind of creating those frameworks around your children and some of their challenges, it actually will lessen a lot of your anxiety. So the first thing I said there is that the teen is coming from an elevated state, an amygdala activation, agitation state. So when the amygdala perceives a threat or is in a state of stress, it's releasing cortisol and it is sending off a vibration. And so that is a negative vibration. It's a fear-based vibration. It's a stressful vibration. And I think that if parents can realize that anytime your child is coming at you from an agitated state, that it's going to cause you agitation. And as soon as it causes you agitation, the invitation from your amygdala is actually to push back at the threat. Because anytime our amygdala sense a threat, what we do is we want to eliminate the threat. We want to suppress the threat. We want to remove the threat. And so our immediate reaction is to want to push back against the child. And I apologize. I got something going on with my eye this evening, a little piece of fuzz or something. But it's important to first see that the child is coming from an elevated amygdala state. And then number two, it's important to realize that activated amygdala state, which is an invitation to you, is also coming from a place of helplessness. It's coming from a place of anxiety. It's coming from a place of fear. And what that typically invites us to want to do is it invites us to want to, push back, try to regain control. And so we'll say things like, you're not going to ruin my Christmas, or you're not going to ruin this family vacation. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. You can deal with it. It's just one day. Just things like what we're typically doing is we're discounting our teenagers' feelings. We're discounting what they're saying. But more than that, we're trying to soothe ourselves. And the problem with that is, number one, when I go back to that statement I like to refer to, that scientific finding, that it is believed that affect dysregulation is a fundamental mechanism for all psychiatric illnesses. And I always reword that to being stressed out as the fundamental cause for all psychological and emotional challenges. Well, when we discount our teenagers, what we're actually doing is we're removing ourselves from our ability to regulate them, because in that moment, they are expressing a challenged regulatory ability. So they are, if not outside of their window of tolerance at that point, they are moving outside of their window of tolerance. So when we discount them by saying things like that, then it usually leaves them to try to figure it out themselves, which then, if they're already in a state of stress, they're probably just going to elevate even more and obsess on it even more, or rebel against us even more. And one of the things that we can do, one of the statements that you would want to make, but instead of the discounting statements, is you would want to simply say, and I'm going to say simply, because it is very simple. If you can override your own activation and just say, I understand. You don't have to say anything more than that. See, our own stress and our own confusion, our own distortion, because stress causes confused and distorted thinking and suppresses the short-term memory. Well, our own stress causes us to want to try to suppress or control or push away that threat. But when we can calm our own activation, that invitation, when we don't have to accept that invitation from our teens, and teens are usually the best at getting you to accept that invitation. And when you accept that invitation, you're giving them the power. And the power you're giving them is you're giving them your stress. You're giving them your fear instead of holding their stress and their fear, containing their stress and their fear, maintaining your power, which is your ability to be loving in the midst of stress. So being able to say something as simple as, I understand, I get it. Heck, sometimes I don't even like the holidays, and people are going to come over here and it's probably going to be loud, and they're going to be wanting to hug on us, and then I'm going to eat too much, and my belly's going to be full. I'm going to be miserable. And shoot, I don't blame you for not wanting to do all that. You know what a teenager does with that? What that's conveying is not only is what I'm feeling okay, because it really is. A lot of times the teenagers just says what we would like to be saying anyway. They just don't have the screens to keep them from saying it, so they say it. So it validates them at a level, number one. And number two, it gives them a sense of control. See, that is really the fundamental challenge with parents and teenagers. And that's the whole dynamic with Defiance, is that a teenager, and for any of us, anytime we encounter a novel event, Bruce Perry says this, we perceive the event as a threat until deemed otherwise. So anytime there's something novel going on, and because remember, the teen brain is on fire. It's trying to prune away, it's heating up and pruning away everything it hadn't used to this point. And not only is your brain on fire, but you're trying to move into independence. So you've got all these confusing hormones and chemicals and messages and these imprints that say you're a teen, you're getting closer to independence, but then there's still a part of you, you're still a child because you've been in this world, as a child a lot longer time than you have been an adult, because being an adult is something new. Then you got these chemicals going crazy in your brain. It's just, everything's confusing. And so you want to have some kind of control over your life. And that is very scary for us as parents. And because it's scary, and again, when I say scary, I want you to remember that means your brain gets activated. Your amygdala gets activated. Your cortisol gets turned on. Your oxytocin response, your brain's anti-stress hormone, gets suppressed. It gets turned down. So your fear dial gets turned up. Your love dial gets turned down. And then you're creating and sending as much of a negative vibration to your child as they're experiencing anyway. And the truth of the matter is they're freaking teenagers. They're supposed to be out of control. They're supposed to be stressed out. They're supposed to be demanding. They're supposed to be defiant. They're supposed to withdraw because their freaking brains are going nuts. The orbital frontal cortex, your prefrontal brain, the executive control center of your social and emotional relationships doesn't complete its development until you're 25 years old. In best case scenarios, when your frontal lobe, your center, your executive control center, listen to that terminology. Your executive control center for social and emotional relationships does not complete its development until you are 25 years old. And we're talking about freaking teenagers, and we want them to act mature. Well, they don't have the brain capacity to get there. Not only do they not have the brain capacity, but their freaking brains are on fire. So what you get from a teenager is exactly what you should expect. Let me say that again. What you get from a teenager is exactly what you expect, what you should expect. If you expect defiance from your teenager, if you expect isolation, if you expect resistance, if you expect, talking back, if you expect them trying to be in control, guess what? It's not a surprise. And if it's not a surprise, guess what your brain doesn't do? Your brain doesn't get threatened. Your brain doesn't feel overwhelmed. You don't feel like you need to try to control the situation because you're already controlling it because you expected it anyway. Voila! The answer to dealing with teens is just to expect the madness. Expect the craziness. Expect the assholishness. Right? Teens are assholes a lot of times. Expect the assholishness that you get from your teen. That way when you get it, guess what? It doesn't matter. You're like, thank you for being a little asshole. Thank you. I love you so much. I can imagine why you feel that way. I get it. When I was a teenager, I was probably a little asshole too. And it's going to be okay. Honey, son, it's going to be okay. We'll get through it. Thank you for letting me know. And so what was my advice to the mom when she asked the question is actually the same thing. Tell him he can spend all his time in his room if he wants. Don't get anxious and feel like you got to try to make him, talk to the family and smile and be happy. Just tell him, hey, hang out in your room the whole time. In fact, I'll check on you and I'll bring you your Christmas dinner. You don't have to come out at all. What? That's so socially unacceptable. How can you let him? Teenagers already isolate all the time. It's funny. One of the people I like to follow, I call him a mentor even because I love everything he's talking about with social media. His name's Gary Vaynerchuk. And I was listening to one of his videos and he was talking about how we say our children have poor social skills because they spend all their time on the phone these days and they don't interact with us. And he says, that's just not true. He said, we just have a skewed perception of children's socialization. He said, in reality, when we were kids, if we didn't have anyone to talk to, we were going outside and throwing a ball against a wall. That was our social interaction, throwing a ball against our wall. Kids these days, they're always socializing. They're always talking to someone. They're always engaging. They're always interacting. It's us that didn't have the good social skills because we were isolated a lot of times. When we didn't have anyone to play with us, we had to entertain ourselves. When the phone was tied up, we had to entertain ourselves. There was no socializing going on. That's an interesting perspective, isn't it? We might not have ever thought about that. Brenda says, my son was overwhelmed with all the company and would do that. Yes. Why? We have to ask him why. We have to ask the question because see what happens is we think, and this comes from misperceptions and it comes from judgments. We think that our teenagers isolating in their room is because they're rude. We think our teenagers isolating in their room is because they are they're just teens and they're acting out and they're inconsiderate and they're disrespectful. So we have all these messages, and therefore we associate them being in their room with all this negativity. So we're projecting all this negativity onto them, and we wonder why they come out of their rooms and they're hostile. It's because we've been sending negative charges to them the whole time, right? They come out, they're on edge because everyone's looking at them in a negative way, and even if you're not saying it, you're feeling it. Why do they really isolate? They isolate because their freaking brains are on fire. Their brains are on fire. They can't. La 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 la. I can't see you. I can't see you. What am I doing? I'm cutting out sensory pathways. I can't see you. It reduces sensory pathway. Your sight is one of the direct ways to stimulate your frontal lobe. I can't hear you. It's a sensory pathway. I'm shutting down a sensory pathway. We're regulating. The teens are regulating. They're doing their best to survive in a seemingly overwhelming environment. I used to do the same thing when I was a kid. I remember we'd go to my grandma's house after church and we'd be there. I'd have about a 2-hour window of time. I'd have about a 2-hour window of time where I would be ready to go home. And a lot of times I remember this. I would get really cranky and I would end up going outside. Because there wasn't so much energy in the house. My grandma had a real small house and there'd be all these relatives up in there. And oh my gosh, I'd have to go out on the porch and go for a walk and go around to the backyard and just try. I was regulating myself. And that's what your teens are doing. So next time your teen is defiant, expect it. And when you expect it, I want you to just look at him and say, thank you, son. Thank you. Thank you, son. I understand. I would feel that way too. In fact, I probably did feel that way. Do you know? Oh, I just felt a little bit of magic happen. I felt it. Someone just went pow, pow, because they know that they've been resistant to their child's defiance, to their teenager's defiance. And they know if they say to their teenager, you know what? I felt the same way. Thank you for letting me know. They know that that's going to melt their teenager. That's powerful. I love it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So how to effectively deal with teen defiance? Realize that they are stressed out. They're overwhelmed. They're scared. They're doing the best they can, and encourage them to be where they need to be and let them know you'll take care of them. And what I told the mom is that what's going to happen, most likely with 90% certainty, it's going to create a paradoxical effect. And because he's given permission to be in his room, because he's not being looked at like he's, a delinquent, he's going to relax, which is going to extend his window of tolerance, and then he's going to spend more time with the family. Probably more time than he would have to begin with. Brenda says he's a respectful young man and is now 30. Some people misunderstand him, but he is a very loving, caring person. I wish you had been around when I was a single mom. You know what, Brenda? You handled it yourself. You handled it. That's all. You got him where he's at right now. There's a reason he's there. So Big Papa didn't need to be around when you were a single mom because you obviously kicked ass. So bless you and congratulations on that. Remember, there are only two choices. We all have two choices. We can continue to react from our same imprints of fear and overwhelm and stress. And we could do the same thing and we can expect a different result. Who said that? Einstein said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result. I've got a perspective on that too. I'll share it another time. But when you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result, that's insanity. Or we can stop. We can take 3 to 10 deep breaths. We can slow down. We can wonder why and really wonder. Don't wonder why from this personalized, judgmental way. Wonder why from this, I'm truly curious. I wonder why. What could be going on? Seek first to understand and then to be understood. You know who said that? Yes, Stephen Covey did say it, but you know who said it first? St. Francis. Slow down, take 3 to 10 deep breaths, and choose love. God bless each and every one of you. May you lay your heads down tonight. May you rest. May you wake up tomorrow restored, refreshed, energized and inspired and full of love. Full of love, full of love, full of love. We'll see you tomorrow.